It all began with a surprising live broadcast from a secure room. Deep inside the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré was watching a satellite feed, showing a private jet landing at Burkina Faso's military airstrip on board was Donald Trump, arriving quietly under a diplomatic cover. Officially, he came to talk trade. Unofficially, he was here to demand something only Traoré could give and to threaten what he couldn't. Traoré's advisor, Marie, whispered urgently, "Mr. President, should we cancel the meeting? He came without press. We still have time." But Traoré, calm and firm, replied, "No, Marie, this time. The world will see what happens when a powerful man thinks he owns a small nation." 30 minutes later, Trump walked into the grand reception room with his red tie, fake smile, and usual confidence. Hidden cameras behind the decorations were already rolling. Traoré signaled him to sit down across from him, beneath the national flag. Without wasting time, Trump got straight to the point. "I'm here to talk about your mining deals. American companies want access. If you don't let them in." He paused and tapped the table. "Bad things happen to stubborn leaders." Traoré leaned back slightly, a small smile appearing unseen by Trump. What Trump didn't realize was that everything he was saying was being broadcast live to millions. This time, there would be no secrets, only raw truth. Trump, unaware of the red recording lights in the room, leaned in closer and said in a quiet, patronizing voice, "Listen, Ibrahim, you're young. You think saying no to America means you're independent. Let me explain how the world works. If you don't open your gold and uranium mines to us, one day you'll wake up and half your country will be on fire. Rebels, drones, sanctions. It's not personal, it's just business." Traoré slowly tapped his fingers on the wooden table. His eyes locked on Trump's face. Round them, loyal guards stood silently, watching everything. Hidden behind a mirrored panel, Marie monitored it all. Millions were already watching the live stream on phones, in cafes, bars across Africa, Europe, even in America. Traoré spoke calmly, "And if I refuse, Mr. Trump, if Burkina Faso doesn't obey?" Trump chuckled and tapped his nose, replying, "Then you'll see headlines about corruption, protests in your streets, maybe even an unfortunate accident for you," he said with a wink, unaware that every word was sealing his own downfall. Outside, crowds were gathering as rumors spread. Students, farmers, off-duty soldiers, all glued to their screens, jaws dropping at what they were hearing. Inside, Traoré leaned forward, still composed, and said, "Mr. Trump, would you like some tea? This conversation deserves a toast." Trump laughed, still thinking he was in control, not realizing his threats were already going viral. A servant quietly placed 2 porcelain teacups between them. Traoré lifted his cup with steady hands and locked eyes with Trump. "To fair deals and honest talks," he said with a subtle tone Trump didn't notice. Trump clinked his cup, grinning like he'd just made another business deal. Outside, Marie's team was already editing clips in real time and sending them to global news outlets. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera had switched their headlines to a live power showdown between Traoré and Trump. Relaxing in his chair, Trump said, "You know, Ibrahim, I respect you. You've got guts. But guts don't stop the CIA. They don't stop my friends in Europe. One call, and you're gone. Work with us, and I can make you rich. Retire at 40. Live on an island, huh?" Traoré's smile faded to something colder. Slowly, he turned one of the hidden cameras directly at Trump, who was still clueless. "You see, Mr. Trump," Traoré said, voice low but razor sharp, "Burkina Faso is not your backyard. My people are not for sale. And this time, your threats are." Trump blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" he snapped. Outside, the crowds cheered as subtitles appeared on screen. "Burkina Faso is not your backyard." Calmly, Traoré set down his teacup and replied, "I mean, Mr. Trump, the whole world is watching you right now." Trump's face turned pale as he finally noticed the blinking lights, the microphones, and the fact that his own arrogance had betrayed him. For a moment, the grand meeting room felt like a sealed vault. Trump's breathing grew heavy while Traoré's calm, steady gaze cut right through him. Outside the door, Trump's security team shifted nervously, sensing the sudden change in power. "Turn them off," Trump snapped, pointing at the hidden cameras. "Shut this circus down now." But Traoré didn't move. Instead, he tapped the table twice, and the main screen behind him lit up, playing the live feed for everyone in the room. Trump's own threats echoed through the speakers. "Half your country in flames. Not personal. Just business." Across Africa, crowds in cafes, markets, and military barracks erupted with cheers, watching an American president get cornered not by weapons, but by truth. Furious, Trump leaned forward, spit at the corner of his mouth. "You think this makes you a hero? You think this saves you? I will ruin you, Traoré. I'll bury you under fake news and sanctions." But Traoré didn't flinch. His voice rose, echoing through the palace and into millions of phones. "Mr. Trump, Burkina Faso kneels to no one. If your empire survives on lies and threats, then let it collapse in the daylight. From today, our people will hear the truth. No more secret deals. No more blackmail disguised as diplomacy." Trump slammed his fist on the table, sending his teacup flying and spilling hot tea across the classified papers. He came to push. Traoré leaned forward just slightly, his eyes locked on Trump's, and said clearly, "Go home, Mr. Trump, and tell the world, Africa is not your playground anymore." Outside, the crowd roared like thunder. Inside, Trump realized he was no longer in control. The palace doors burst open as his aides rushed in, earpieces buzzing with panic from Washington. One whispered urgently, "Mr. President, the feed's gone viral. We need to leave now." Trump threw one last bitter glare at Traoré and hissed, "You'll regret this. You have no idea." As Trump was being humiliated on the global stage, Traoré stood up slowly, adjusting the collar of his plain military jacket, a quiet but powerful reminder that he wasn't just another politician in a suit. He was a soldier of his people. He turned to his security chief and said firmly, "Show our guest the way out, and make sure his plane leaves our soil within the hour." As Trump was escorted out, the palace staff stood in stunned silence. Many had feared this meeting for weeks, but now, watching their young president stand tall and unshaken, that fear turned into fierce pride. Outside, crowds pushed against barricades, chanting Traoré's name while news drones hovered above, broadcasting every second around the world. Back inside, Traoré turned to Marie, who was wiping tears from her eyes, laughing and shaking. "Mr. President," she whispered, "the whole continent just watched you take down the biggest empire with nothing but the truth." Traoré didn't smile. His face remained calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "This isn't about me, Marie," he said. "It's about every African leader who believes they have to bow in order to survive. Tonight, we reminded them sovereignty isn't begged for in Washington, it's earned in the U.S. White House officials scrambled to do damage control, but it was too late. The footage of Trump's threats played endlessly, dubbed into Swahili, French, and Arabic. Burkina Faso, once dismissed as just another pawn, had made a global superpower sweat. Hours later, deep inside the Situation Room in Washington, Trump slammed his hand on the polished mahogany table as his advisors flinched. "How the hell did this happen?" he shouted. Behind him, screens replayed the footage Traoré had streamed to the world. Every news network, even conservative ones, were looping the same story: an American president threatening a small African nation and losing. One advisor stammered, unsure what to say. "Sir, we underestimated him. He turned the leak into a weapon. Public opinion is." "I don't care about public opinion," Trump snapped, cutting the advisor off mid-sentence. "I want options, sanctions, covert ops, something to teach this kid who really runs the world." But back in Ouagadougou, Traoré stood quietly by a window, gazing at the glowing city lights below. Tens of thousands of people had gathered in celebration, waving flags and singing freedom songs that hadn't echoed through the streets since the revolution decades ago. Beside him stood Sankara, an old friend, now once again his advisor, who chuckled and said, "Do you realize what you did tonight, Ibrahim? You didn't just embarrass a president, you proved Africa can say no and mean it." Traoré didn't look away from the window. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I did what had to be done, but this isn't over. They'll Come back more careful next time. Economic pressure, propaganda, puppets in our backyard. We have to be ready. Sankara's eyes lit up. Then let's make this unity permanent. One truth on every street. One hope in every village. So next time, they won't find one man to bribe, they'll face millions ready to resist. At last, Traoré turned from the window, a rare smile breaking through his usual calm. Let them come. Outside, the celebration continued through the night, a message blazing across the continent. The era of silent obedience was over. By dawn, the world had already split. Some called Traoré reckless, others hailed him as the voice of a new, unchained Africa. In Paris, London, and Washington, experts debated if a small landlocked country could really challenge the global order. But in the dusty courtyards of Ouagadougou, no one cared what the pundits said. They had seen their president, a man who once fought barefoot in the bush, stand eye to eye with a superpower, and refused to kneel, in a quiet room near the palace. Traoré met with his most trusted circle, Sankara, General Cabaret, and Marie. Maps were spread across the table, marked with red lines and pins showing key resources, border zones, and media hubs. This is bigger than Trump now, Sankara said. They'll try to divide us from the inside, spread fake scandals, buy off local chiefs, stir up old rivalries. Traoré nodded. We fight back by getting ahead of them. We speak to the people before they do. We build our own media, our own truth. General Caboret, usually calm and reserved, slammed his hand on the table. Then we start by clearing the traitors inside these walls. If even one remains, they'll open the gates for our enemies. Traoré's eyes sharpened as he pointed to the map's center, a circle around Ouagadougou. Then tonight, we clean house, no mercy for betrayal. Marie shivered slightly at the steel in his voice. It was the same voice she'd heard years ago in the trenches, when a young Captain Traoré had taken back a rebel-held town with only a handful of men and unshakable will. Outside, the sun rose slowly over the capital, but inside the palace, shadows still lingered. As evening fell and the sky turned blood red over Ouagadougou, the purge began quietly at first. Whispered commands moved through dim hallways. Loyal guards replaced others. Doors were sealed where ministers once walked freely. General Caboret led the operation himself, kicking in the doors of men who had sworn loyalty to Traoré, while secretly sending whispers to foreign embassies. For every traitor caught, another was uncovered: corruption, bribes, secret accounts, promises of power once Traoré was out of the way. Meanwhile, deep inside a hidden room in the palace, Traoré sat with Sankara and Marie beneath a flickering lamp, reviewing a slim folder marked Operation Cheetah. This, Sankara said, tapping the cover, is their next move. They're sending mercenaries, Western contractors, ex-special forces. It's an assassination plot. If we hadn't found these documents, Traoré's jaw clenched, I'd be dead by next week and a puppet would be sitting in my place. Marie's voice shook, but her words were steady. Then what do we do? Traoré looked at them both, eyes cold and unyielding. We don't hide. We don't beg. We bait them. He snapped the folder shut. I'll go where they think I'm most vulnerable, a village inspection in the north. I want them to come for me there. And when they do, we won't greet them as prey. He stood tall, not just as a president, but as a soldier once again, ready to face whatever came. While General Caboret's men dragged out the last palace traitors under the moonlit sky, few in the city below knew their leader had just challenged some of the world's deadliest men to come for him and planned to bury them instead. A few days later, dawn broke over the dry northern plains of Burkina Faso. The small village of Tengodogo, usually ignored by politicians, now buzzed with hidden snipers, elite soldiers, and surveillance drones circling silently above the thatched rooftops. Ibrahim Traoré arrived with only a small visible security team. To an outsider, he looked exposed, just a president in the dust, shaking hands, inspecting water pumps, laughing with elders beneath the old baobab tree. But hidden in the shadows were loyal men and women, ready to fight and die for him and the trap they had set. Not far away in an abandoned warehouse, General Caboret and Sankara leaned over screens showing live drone feeds. A red van was approaching, right on schedule, just as the intercepted plan predicted. Inside were for foreign mercenaries, heavily armed, thinking they were about to take out an easy target and cash in big. Traoré spoke into his radio, voice calm, but eyes intense. Positions. No shots until my signal. We want them alive. Back in the village, Traoré's laughter with the locals stopped as the van rolled to a halt. His guards stiffened, but he raised his hand. Let them come closer. Let them think the lion is sleeping. The van's door slid open, and weapons caught the sunlight. Villagers gasped. Children froze. Traoré stepped forward, alone, hands empty, locking eyes with the lead mercenary pointing a rifle at him, and he smiled. All around, behind haystacks and rooftops, 200 trained eyes and steady rifles waited for Traoré's command. This time, Africa was ready. For one breathless moment, the entire village seemed frozen. Dust swirled in golden beams, goats bleated. In the distant sand, in that silence, the four mercenaries finally understood. The trap had already closed. The lead gunman barked in a harsh, unfamiliar accent, "On your knees now." But Traoré didn't move. Instead, he took another step forward, eyes locked on the man's face, an uneasy mix of arrogance and fear. "Look around you," Traoré said, his voice calm but sharp as iron, cutting through the morning air. "You came to hunt a lion in his own den." He raised one finger, and on a nearby rooftop, General Traoré clenched his radio and gave the signal. Now, in an instant, the village erupted into controlled chaos. Hidden soldiers rose from behind market stalls, emerged from behind crumbling walls, and dropped silently from trees. The mercenaries spun in confusion, searching for cover, but there was none. Gunfire cracked through the air like dry branches, snapping. Within seconds, two of the assassins were face down in the dirt, weapons kicked away. The remaining to drop their rifles and fell to their knees, shaking. Traoré stood over them, unshaken, no longer just a president, but the hunter they had come for. Children peeked out from behind the huts, not seeing a man in danger, but a leader in full command. General Traoré approached, breathless but grinning. "We have them, sir. They'll talk, they always do, once they remember whose land this is." Sankara stepped forward, holding a satellite phone recovered from the van. "And when they talk, we'll follow every dollar back to the cowards in suits who thought Africa would kneel forever." Traoré turned to the villagers, who had witnessed every second. His voice rose above the wind. "Remember this day. They sent wolves for us, but we showed them who the real hunters are. The world just learned a hard truth: wolves cannot rule lions." Cheers erupted. Some wept. In a net remote village beneath the unforgiving sun, the message spread faster than any bullet. Africa would no longer wait for permission to protect its dignity. For Ibrahim Traoré, the hunt was only beginning. Tonight wasn't just a story of bullets and betrayal. It was a lesson etched into the red soil of Africa. They thought Traoré could be cornered, bought, or hunted like prey, but once again, the hunter became the hunted. And now, across every village, behind every dusty door, a new generation is watching. They understand no foreign money, no mercenary squad can crush the spirit of a people standing behind a leader unafraid to fight back. Let this be a reminder to the world: Africa is not a playground for backroom deals and silent assassins. It is a continent of lions, and lions do not bow. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay courageous, and remember, the untold state will always bring you the stories they never want you to hear.